Good afternoon, BDAA members and guests, and welcome to the February online chapter meeting. We've got an exciting meeting for you today with Zara Decotta from the Healthy Home, obviously talking healthy homes. And we also have Ali Jackson and Chris Allison from the Sky Garden Group talking vertical gardens and green roofs. So some very exciting things coming up. But first, before we get into that, just some news about what's happening in the world of the BDAA. Well, welcome back to a new year for the online chapter. I'm stepping in for Jen Binns for today, and hopefully she'll be back with us next month. Some exciting things happening with CPD this month and into the future. Tomorrow morning, we have a formal CPD on how to model different types of wall wraps accurately and successfully. So Sarah Jane is going to put the link in the chat right now. So if you'd like to register for this event, click onto that. There's a lot of face-to-face meetings now taking place around Australia, and it's great with all the COVID restrictions lifted that we can get back into the regular meetings of meeting our fellow members face-to-face. So you can head over to the Eventbrite or BDAA website for full details to register for these events. And I know there's some very exciting things happening. My own chapter in Western Sydney in February is hosting on the 21st an excellent evening focusing on bushfire with Dave Boverman from the RFS. So very much looking forward to that one. We also have coming up on the 8th of March is International Women's Day, something very close to my heart. And the BDAA has scheduled a number of events in each of the states of Australia. So mark that date in your diary, and we'd love you to come along and support these events. So although it's International Women's Day, these events are for both men and women, and we really love having men support women in the built environment. The full roster of guest speakers and locations will be announced shortly. Also, if you haven't yet been part of and joined the connected BDAA community, Sarah Jane will also put that link in the chat. Now, the connected community is a forum for members to be able to ask and answer questions and communicate. And there are certainly lots of interesting conversations going on out there. The current hot topics on the connected community are, dare I say, hot slabs and artificial intelligence. Some really interesting discussions going there. And as always, it's an opportunity to ask for recommendations and ask your general building questions. The friendly building designers community is always happy to help out. So without taking up any more time, I would like to introduce to you our first speaker for today, who's Zara Decotta from the Healthy Home. Zara is a building biology consultant and the founder of the Healthy Home. Zara discovered her passion for the built environment after her own experiences with environmental illness. She's carried out extensive research and realised that unhealthy homes are making us sick. Zara has been on a mission to help home renovators and builders and building industry professionals make informed building material and design choices ever since. Zara is a graduate of the Building Biology Institute in the United States, a keynote speaker, and has featured in many popular media outlets including Domain, The Sun Herald, 10 News, The Project and The Today Show. Zara is going to be talking to us today about what makes a building material healthy. Welcome, Zara.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you so much for having me on this call today. I'm so grateful and excited to have the opportunity to chat to you all. So purpose of today's presentation is to really give you an introduction into what building biology is and how I came to discovering building biology. And then if you're feeling called to learn more, I will then be delivering a series of presentations for Building Designers Association members in February and April, including what makes a building material healthy. Hello, thank you for saying hello, everybody. It's great to see you all in the chat. What I'd love to know before I actually get started, I'm so glad that I can see the chat box, is have you heard of building biology already? Are you familiar with it? Have you had your home assessed, worked with a building biologist, or is it a completely new concept to you? I'd love to know. Hello, Kylie, Geelong, Tassie. Wow, you're people from everywhere. It's really great to see you. Okay, so to give you an understanding of the work that I do as a building biology new build consultant, I'm really focused on helping home renovators and builders and building industry professionals make informed decisions in relation to home design and building materials. And I do this through online programs and in-person programs and events, and also consulting services. And I discovered building biology, it was 8 years ago now. It's hard to believe it's been 8 years, but it was after my second cancer diagnosis in 2 years. And I had lost a very close lifelong friend to cancer shortly after my own experiences. And I was incredibly fortunate in that both my cancers were caught early and they hadn't spread. But I was naturally now starting to question what I needed to do to lead a long and healthy life. And that led me on a search for answers that, to be honest, uncovered way more than I had ever hoped to learn in my lifetime. And it was, I would say it was quite overwhelming at first, but I definitely believe that knowledge is power, and it has ultimately been the greatest gift. So I went to a environmentally aware naturopath who did the longest health history anyone had ever done. She spent 90 minutes asking me about every symptom and illness I had ever experienced, going back to when I was born. She asked me about all of the buildings that I had lived in throughout my life. She also happened to be trained as a mold testing technician, and we realized that I am one of the 1 in 4 people that is genetically susceptible to mold. So even though I hadn't been sick through my cancer experiences or radiation treatment, because of the surgeries and treatments and all the stress, I now had about 20 plus symptoms that no doctor was able to diagnose or explain any other reason than stress. So she told me that day that I would need to, anytime I wanted to move house for the rest of my life, I would need to get a building biologist to assess my home to make sure it was going to be safe for me to live in, because I now had environmental sensitivities on the extreme end of the scale. So I had a building biologist come to assess my house. So a building biologist is like a doctor for your home. They come and they'll assess various aspects of the built environment. So I had a mold and an EMF assessment to try and understand what in the home might be contributing to health problems. And so building biology is derived from the German words Baubiologie. And even though it's not very well known here in Australia, it was founded in Germany in the 1970s. So after World War II, there was a group of professionals that noticed that following the introduction of synthetic building materials and the move to new construction methods as a result of the need to build a lot of homes really quickly, they noticed the declining health of the population. And so building biology was founded by Professor Anton Schneider, PhD, and electrobiologist Alfred Hornig. And building biology is really unique in its focus on the impact of the built environment on the human. Building science is certainly a really important piece of that puzzle, but there are other elements that need to be considered that building biology addresses, like looking at external health hazards near where a home is being built, looking at electromagnetic radiation and man-made radiation, considering the health and environmental impacts of building materials. And the goal really is for harmony in the relationship between the human and the building and the environment. So wanting all three to coexist peacefully. So I was absolutely blown away when this building biologist came to assess my house. I'd never had any understanding that our home could either really nurture our ability to thrive or actually be quite detrimental to how we feel day to day. And I made some changes in my home, and I started to feel better towards the end of that year, but I decided to leave Melbourne and lead a new life in Sydney, which in hindsight was not far from the smartest decision I've ever made, being one of the moldiest cities in Australia. And I spent the subsequent 4 years on the move, from one water damaged building to the next, trying to find a home that I could live in to enable my body to heal. And I eventually decided to leave city life and move here to the beautiful northern rivers of New South Wales. And after 6 weeks of looking at places I knew weren't going to be ideal for my health, I decided to move into a newly built home. And I really thought this was going to be the key to getting my health back on track. And it has been in many ways. But I woke up after my first night and my eyes were stinging so intensely. I had to get out of the house while I let fresh air in. I had a rash and bouts of nausea for the first few months. I suspect as a result of high levels of carcinogenic ingredients like formaldehyde and VOCs that are so common in building materials. So it was at this point that I decided that I really needed to learn all I could about the health and environmental impacts of building materials and home design so that I can one day build my own healthy home and also do whatever I could to be part of the movement for change. In the meantime, because in sharing my own stories, I had more and more people reaching out to me about their own mold experiences. And I was very, very deliberate in my decision to not be a building biologist that assesses homes, not only because I didn't want to put my own health at risk, but there's no joy in telling someone that they have a mold problem that's really difficult and costly to fix. I really wanted to focus on being part of the longer term solution so that fewer people have to go through what I and so many other people have been through. And so that led to my decision to study building biology, focusing on new builds. So my intention initially was to help residential clients make informed choices in relation to their builds. And to be honest, I was quite terrified at what building industry professionals would think, given I don't build or design homes, which is part of the reason I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you today. But soon enough, I had building industry professionals, building designers, architects, builders, interior designers, reaching out, wanting to do my residential course for their own knowledge. And I had an architect that went through the first round and said to me, this is really important information that everyone in the building industry needs to know. And he encouraged me to start a group for building industry professionals. So I did that. And even though it wasn't something that I intended to do when I set out on this path, I'm so glad that he gave me that nudge, because between you and I, everyone on this call, it's become the part of the work that I do that gives me the most joy, because my ability to impact change when I don't actually design or build the homes myself is quite limited. But when you think of how many people are on this call, there's a few hundred of you. Every home that you design, like between you this year, if you start implementing healthier building practices, and in the years to come, the ripple effect of that is just so huge. And the building industry professionals I've been so fortunate to meet along the way have become some of my greatest teachers and allies and friends in the movement for change. So there's so much happening in the building industry this year with the changes to the National Construction Code, and particularly in relation to condensation management. And I'm so blown away by the extent of these changes and how much is going to be addressed. Really, really pleasantly surprised. And I know that this is also going to mean a lot for you in your businesses. And so the presentations that I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks, I'm really putting together with the aim of helping you feel informed on topics that you may not already feel informed on. Like the first one will be what makes a building material healthy. I do have a few slides of the presentations that I'll be doing. If I can just screen share. Okay, it's not going to let me. Oh, can you see my screen? No. Okay, it's not going to let me do that, so I'm just going to keep going. But the first one is going to be what makes a building material healthy. So there's so much focus on sustainable materials, which is brilliant, but there's so much more that needs to be considered, and a material that might be a better choice for the environment isn't necessarily going to be a better choice for the people whose homes that you're designing. So there's a set of criteria that I use when assessing building materials that I'm going to talk through in this presentation, including what sort of factors you need to consider to determine the likelihood of a material having, the mold susceptibility of a material. And the other thing I think you need to be careful about in, meeting the new requirements of the NCC in relation to, considering mold susceptibility of materials is that you don't become so laser focused on mold susceptibility that you forget to consider other potential unintended consequences of the material. So that's something I'm going to be talking about in quite a bit of depth. And then the second presentation will be what is a healthy home. So the first one's on the 23rd of Feb. The second one's on the 15th of March, Wednesday the 15th of March. And so what is a healthy home? It's so amazing to see more and more people in the building industry talk about healthy homes and how important they are. It honestly excites me so much. But it is a phrase that I feel has become a buzzword and that is being used quite loosely without fully understanding the many different ways a home can impact a person's health. So I'm going to be talking through what are the 5 pillars of a healthy home, and I'm going to talk through something that I think is really important that needs to happen even before the designs are drawn so that you can feel confident that the designs that you draw are going to support the wellbeing of your clients. And yes, these will be formal CPD events, and I'm told that these will be sent to you via email after today. And then the third presentation will be on the topic of preventing mold in new builds. So there is so much that is addressed in NCC 22 in relation to condensation management in roofs and walls. But there are some other quite critical factors that aren't addressed in the NCC yet that I think are really important based on my own experiences in the many different homes I've stayed in the past 8 years and what I've seen in client mold assessment reports. And the good news is that they're things that are really easy to address just by being aware when you are doing the design. So I'm going to share what they are in that presentation. So if you're feeling, this has obviously been a very brief introduction, really just scratching the surface of a huge topic and subset of topics. If you feel interested to learn more, I'd love to see you on the presentations. And I just want to finish by saying how much I respect and admire the work that you do. And I often say to my clients that work in the building industry, I think that the work that you do and the role that you play in your clients' lives is actually more important than the family doctor, because if your home is making you sick, there is very little that any healthcare professional can do to help you unless you get out of that environment, which is the easiest and hardest thing about overcoming environmental illness. And I've also come to really understand how much, detail you're required to be across in your day-to-day jobs and the many different hats you have to wear, project management and business management. So what I really see that I'm here to do is to really try and simplify the process of you becoming informed to make better decisions in relation to materials and design and their impact on human health and our environment. Thank you so much. And if anyone's got questions, there's 5 minutes, I understand, for questions. So just pop them in the chat box.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions here. Kylie Mitchell's asking a couple, which is, will you cover topics like electromagnetic fields in your presentations? And also how to assess a suitable site for a healthy home?
They are topics I am definitely going to be including in these presentations. I'm so glad you asked, Kylie, because they're both really, really important ones that I think are really overlooked.
Fantastic. And Sonia's asked, what qualifications do you need to become a building biologist? And where can we find out more about courses about that?
Yeah, so if you want to be a building biologist that assesses homes, There's courses in Australia through the Australian College of Environmental Studies, which is where I started my studies. And then I got my certification through the Building Biology Institute in the USA, because that was the only institute I could find that offered a focus on new builds.
Fantastic. Look, thank you very much. And look, while I'm here, I'm actually just going to introduce you to, sorry if you can see that, this is Timmy, who's in fact my air quality meter. And I think it's something really useful that all of our members can just sort of focus on looking at both the air quality and the health of our buildings. And Timmy will actually sort of tell you not only the CO2 levels, humidity and temperature, but also your VOCs, your formaldehyde and your 2.5 and 10 particulates. So
Wow.
just for building designers, just sort of raising the consciousness about what the air quality is. If you know what it's like in your house, you can always take one of these along to your your client's house and just sort of give them some readings, so understanding what those types of things are. So will you be talking about sort of what sort of levels would be appropriate for those types of measures in your presentations?
I won't be addressing air quality levels. There's a lot of other things I will, but to be honest, other than humidity, monitoring humidity in my home, which is really important for mold, I choose not to, because I know that there's going to be higher levels than normal, and I don't know that knowing the exact amount of VOCs is necessarily going to be the best thing for my mental health. And there's natural forms of formaldehyde and VOCs, like humans emit VOCs, we emit VOCs when we're cooking. So how do you differentiate between like whether it's coming from a building materials or a natural source?
Oh, look, thank you very much for that. So we have a couple more questions just coming through now. Jerry's asking, is referring to the red list when specifying products a good start when trying to select healthy materials that are healthy? Are you familiar with the red list?
There are so many different lists and certifications, and to be honest, I look at safety data sheets, and I look at different I'll talk about it in more depth in the next presentation on the 28th, a set of criteria I consider, rather than relying on like another list or certification scheme to arrive at my own conclusions and do my own research into like medical databases and known health impacts.
Okay, fantastic. I think that's all we have there. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and certainly your upcoming 3 presentations look very interesting, and I'm sure that our members will look forward to those. Thanks very much for talking to us today, Zara.
Thank you.
We will now move on to our second speakers. We actually have 2 second speakers, and they are Ali Jackson and Chris Allison from the Sky Garden Group. So what they'll be doing today is discussing how to successfully implement green infrastructure into your designs. Ali is a landscape operations manager, and she brings her extensive horticultural experience and design eye to her role leading the professional team at Sky Gardens Group. She's a qualified horticulturalist and landscape designer. Ali has almost 20 years of experience working across the horticulture industry. Hello, Ali. For more than a decade, she's inspired residential gardeners, landscape architects and designers through the media, writing and presenting for Gardening Australia magazine and TV, Better Homes and Gardens and Guerrilla Gardeners TV. More recently, she's honed her skills in residential garden design, amenity pruning and maintenance, and she has experience in plant breeding and as a primary and secondary gardening educator. She's a passionate gardener and environmentalist. And we also have Chris Allison, who's the landscape executive. He brings a 30-year background in green walls to the Sky Gardens Group. His company, City Forest, is among the oldest and most experienced green wall companies in the Southern Hemisphere. As the director, designer and consultant, both locally and internationally, City Forest's innovative design for environmental control systems and green wall hardware is backed by his extensive experience and R&D in the industry. Well, looking forward to hearing from both of you today. Welcome to the BDAA.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's really nice to join you all. I'll go with some slides and then we'll come back at the end of that and answer any questions if anyone has any.
Fantastic.
Thank you for having us. The purpose of our talk today is really to get you guys familiar with what it is that we offer as Sky Gardens Group. We are a green infrastructure gardening company that bring green infrastructure to elevated buildings such as One Central Park, and podiums, walls, roofs. We are installing design consultants on those, and I'll just take you through this little talk now. Oh, wait a second. I'll also share my screen, which I haven't done yet. Yeah, this one. That should be it, but what I've just got to do is go like this. Ah, so tech savvy. There you are, everyone. So first up, Sky Gardens Group, we want to know what it is that you need. I imagine that as building designers, you guys have got some really beautiful imaginations and are able to come up with the most exciting ideas. We want to hear what they are, and we then want to use our experience to enable your vision. There's a real push for sustainable cities right now, and an understandable need for more green infrastructure and just gardens generally in our urban areas. So we are here at the ready to help you do that. We want to know how to make your creative ideas become realities. We have most of the practical solutions that we can apply to those ideas. And really the best stage at which to involve us is in the design phase, so that we can get to the bottom of anything that might look like it could be a problem. We can apply our experience from previous installs and just from being in the industry. We can actually then preempt the issues that might happen and mitigate disasters by catching them and nipping them in the bud. Chris has been in the industry now for 30 years and is researching and developing new variations that are going to make attaching plants to both internal and external parts of a building more successful. So we want to share those with you. There's also the opportunity to use that research and development and the various products that Chris has come up with to then retrofit buildings. So it doesn't even need to be a new build. It can be renovating, adding and altering to existing buildings that we can really add the element of interesting planting by being brought on board. So we act as consultants to the industry. We're available to run through designs and plans, ideally to be able to then spot both at installation and at maintenance phase where things are going to hold up or hinder the people who are maintaining the gardens and those assets once these buildings exist. All of these gardens that we refer to are gardens that have been removed from a water table. So none of them actually none of them are in ground. Everything that we are responsible for designing, creating and installing or maintaining are plants that are above that water table area. So it's a really, it's a complicated and really dynamic environment that needs to be well designed, installed and then maintained in order to have and achieve the longevity in a garden that you really want to have. And that's expected as well. I mean, if people are investing in these, they want this hardware and they want these plants and gardens to last a long time. Biophilic design, of course, is connecting people to nature, and without a doubt, we've seen how important that is, as I said earlier. So we are here using amazing technology. This, for example, is one of Chris's green wall installations, and generally is the recipe, right? Mm-hmm. Basically the recipe. We also design. So we like to work collaboratively, both with designers and with our clients, to work to the site restrictions so that we can come up with the best possible solution for landscapes. You can incorporate our research and development into your visions if we're assisting you with making those things a reality. The prototypes that have begun to roll off the 3D printer.
Okay, so yeah, we've got smart design available for incorporation of smart watering systems onto modern infrastructure. So coming up with new novel ways to allow specification of green planting on the facades taking into account modern constraints of fire codes and water issues. So we, with the technology of 3D printing now, allow us to prototype these developments very quickly and move ahead with them, as opposed to in the past it was a very costly and time-consuming process.
We have them available to have a look at Rosebery, in our Rosebery offices. So again, if people are nearby or want to get in touch with us, we can take you through what those things are. We also assist with site-specific plant palette design. I'm a horticulturalist. We have a team of horticulturalists that work with us at Sky Gardens Group, and that's one of our joys, is thinking about plants and the combination of plants that work for the specific sites. We can also install, so both for new and for old builds, we can be involved in installing green infrastructure, retrofitting boutique infrastructure to previous or to existing buildings. And none of these things are standard landscapers items. You're not going to walk into Bunnings and find the correct gear to have a long-standing vertical garden of any sort successfully work on a building. So these are things that rooftops as well, green walls, podium planting, that we can assist you to create. This is one of our most recent hydroponic installations that we did at a commercial property down in Darlinghurst. Unfortunately, we weren't part of the design, the conceptual stage, so we got to it a little bit late. And unfortunately, things like drainage holes, power, and the availability of water was just made a little bit more difficult for a specific area where they wanted to have an atrium garden fitted out. So this went over, there's several levels within this atrium open space that we were kitting out with a really beautiful hydroponic garden. It's and this is just like a week after it had been installed, so it's been highly successful. All those plants will grow over the irrigation line that you can just see there in the picture at the moment.
We incorporated watering system into that with the constraints offered of no water available. So we custom designed tanks that go underneath that can be monitored simply to give the client the desired effect that they were after, based on the fact that they didn't have that water available.
And you feed it through that system too, so that it's all self-sufficient. Maintenance is the other thing that we do, and that's how Sky Gardens Group came to be. We actually formed, Chris from City Forest and Sky 5, which is a height access company, came together to put together the tender for One Central Park when we knew that they required a new maintenance contractor. So we have the experience of the height access, which meant that we were able to get around to all of the facades of the building a lot faster than had previously been the case. We have really complex knowledge of the irrigation systems that need to be involved in a building of this magnitude. One Central Park is 2 buildings, one's 32, one's 16 levels. It's clad completely in planter boxes that are filled with plants, and there are about 24 really large scale green walls that also cloak the building that you can see from Broadway and Central. So it's a complicated site, and it's one that we have been maintaining now for about 18 months with really great feedback. Yeah. We have one of the main things that we really are all about is communication of our progress and of what's happening. And so in order to keep the stakeholders informed and to make sure that we are staying on top of all of our KPIs, we have this customized report that we put together at the end of every week, having collected data every day from our ROPEs using smart technology. It's it keeps everyone on track. And then the other thing that we do, of course, is remedial work, which, if it could be avoided at any cost and we could do things to start with, it would be a lovely fairy tale ending, but that's not how it goes. And so we're available to resolve common issues that we find quite often happen in these specialist areas where a landscaper has been asked or employed to install something and it's gone slightly wrong. So we're really good at identifying those issues and then resolving those, really integrating these efficient and successful options, and really, yeah, we've been having extremely good results. So choosing us, we're passionate about this industry. It's something that we really love doing, and
it's a very specialized emerging, I guess, industry that we are extremely passionate about. And it is something that is mentioned from Ali, highly specialized. It's not something that is a standard landscaping item, what we do. It's really important to note that as soon as something's removed from the water table, as she said, it becomes somewhat of a specialized field when it's not attached to the groundwater. So our, I guess, experience and research for rooftop gardens, planter boxes and vertical gardens of both tensile stainless and green walls positions us to be at the forefront of the design phase, the installation and the maintenance of these specialised projects. There are very few people qualified to do this sort of work, and we are here to introduce ourselves as one of those.
Thank you. So, does anyone have any questions? I'll stop sharing that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for talking to us about that. I've always been really interested in both vertical gardens and roof gardens. But a lot of the projects you showed sort of were the larger sort of commercial type projects, whereas a lot of our members will be working on residential projects. And we have a lot of clients who see these types of things and would like them applied to their residential project. How feasible and what differences do you need to apply to those systems to apply them to a residential project?
Scale. We can just scale them down. We can accommodate any size project. We do have the ability to run commercial job sites of any size, but it's all down to scale. I mean, at the end of the day, working with the technology that we've developed can work at any level. So it can be a residential small rooftop garden on top of a garage, some planter boxes, or incorporation of green walls onto the facades of residential buildings.
I know that a lot of clients have been sort of interested, but have been put off often by the high cost of those sorts of things. What could be done to sort of bring the costs down and make them more affordable for homeowners to add to their buildings?
Well, I guess there's a point where to have a job done professionally, the client needs to be educated from the start of the cost per square metre for these types of projects. And if that's not within budget, then they need to possibly either not embark on that or look for some other alternative which we can offer. So if somebody wants a green wall and it's cost prohibitive per square metre, we can then look at incorporating planter boxes with tensile wires, and that can then reduce the cost considerably. Might take a little bit longer for them to get the desired result and a variation of plants available for the site, but will still give a green effect.
So when you're talking about sort of those sort of finding out what costs would be, where would, say, a designer go to sort of, if they have a client who's interested in that, to get like an initial idea of the cost of those sorts of things at the early design phase?
They just contact us and we can discuss the project and give them an idea of what the costs are involved.
Okay, fantastic. So do we have some questions from our audience today? I'm just going through. The other issues that a couple of things have also come up in terms of the range of plants that can be used. What's that sort of limited by?
I think that there needs to be a sensible approach to the plants. I've also just seen another question about Jock and Hannah, who put in the gardens at One Central Park. I think that ideally plants that are going to work, that are going to mimic nature, are best used in this environment. They all need to be irrigated. This is by no means a natural situation, and all of these plants require irrigation. In terms of the ones that are best to use, we are seeing and are well aware of the ones that work best in these aspects. But and every situation is different. So sorry, I'm now combining a few different questions all at once, answers to questions. At One Central Park, we use a mix of 2/3 of recycled water and 1/3 potable water. On a daily basis, could you use grey water diversion to provide water? So yes, you could use some. My neighbours, Jock and Hannah, I wouldn't know about the green waste, of course. So this question is relating to vertical gardens, that the vegetation not playing any role in keeping the building cool, and that 1,500 skips of green waste are removed every year. It's a garden, so a garden's going to produce green waste. What the green waste amounts to, I haven't kept track, but I would not say that it's 1,500 skips. It's still a garden though that needs to be maintained and tidied up, and that was always going to be part of the building's maintenance budget. And in terms of it keeping the building cool, yeah, everyone air conditions their apartments. I just think that most people who live in this building want the best of everything. But
in terms of looking at that from another perspective,
yeah.
Because I think that one of the things that's often touted about green walls is that they can add to the cooling of a building. Do you have any experience with that? And how effective is that?
It's documented that green walls can help improve the thermal efficiency of a building. As far as the carbon footprint of green waste is concerned, well, green waste is recyclable and it's turned into humus. So yeah, sort of ready to perhaps
move on
from that question.
Yeah. So some of the other questions looking at whether you can have edible gardens. So
look, yeah, you can. Yes.
Yeah.
So the simple answer is yes.
Yeah.
Whether it's going to look attractive.
Yeah, there's that. There's also and also the upkeep, as you know, with a veggie patch, you need to be out there for an hour every day. So you could, but it's just a lot more maintenance, and that maintenance then needs to be budgeted for in the design phase, then allow for the success of the garden to continue during the span.
So if you're looking at edible gardens, you might be looking at somewhere that's more accessible for regular maintenance then.
Yeah, for sure.
Like a ground. So they're also asking about whether you design the types of plants that are required for individual projects.
Yeah, absolutely. We do that. Okay. And we are mainly in Sydney right now. We've started in Sydney, and that's where we're working. The majority of our work is. We really like to get down
and Melbourne, though.
Yeah, down to Victoria for sure.
Can sort of vertical gardens work in all climate areas?
It's all dependent on specification. Yes, they can.
Okay. We also have a question in bushfire, whether you work with a fire rating for the structure and bushfire areas. Is that an issue when you're looking at sort of green walls and planters?
Yeah, so part of the research that we're doing is very much taking into account fire issues, I guess, and materials that are involved within that. So yeah, we do extensive research based on that. Yes.
So have some of the projects, I'm assuming, particularly the high-rise apartments, they've obviously had FRLs. And what sort of fire ratings have you had to work to?
We haven't
at the moment.
We've inherited the building as it stands.
Okay, so you weren't involved in the design of that?
Oh God, no.
Okay. And subsequent projects that you've worked on, have you had to do designs that have required fire ratings?
It's up to the builder to obtain that, and we can help work within those parameters that are given to them from the certifiers.
Fantastic. We have another question just asking about whether you have a standard and affordable detail in order to adequately drain and waterproof a planter box on a concrete slab balcony for a house. Now, that's probably something that's going to come up quite often. People wanting to
Yes.
have greenery on their concrete balcony.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
Okay. Is there a sort of a standard solution to that?
Well, there is no standard solution because
Okay.
every plant box is different and customized to the site. Otherwise, it's essentially a plant pot from a hardware store. So specialized planter design takes into account the aspects and constraints involved in what we've got to work with on each individual site. So at the end of the day, I mean, a membrane is what waterproofs a planter box. The added detail to that is customized to each individual site.
Okay, more questions just about the plants. They're asking about whether you have flowering plants. I'm assuming that's sort of a similar to your vegetables or edibles.
Oh, no, there's definitely flowering plants that work really well here at One Central Park, and quite nice to see. They're not significant flowers, and it's not like anyone can lean over and smell the roses. So, you know, it's really, they're a byproduct. The fact is it needs to be green and beautiful, but without doubt, you can definitely use flowering plants. And then in shaded areas too, it's more about the contrast of the leaf.
Yeah.
And the various textures of the plants that you can then really go to town with.
So if a client comes to you and they're saying, look, I'm interested in either vertical garden or planter boxes or whatever, what are the sorts of types of questions you should ask them to get that necessary information to sort of determine whether it's feasible and to take to that design phase?
The height and width of the space, the aspect of the space, all that to do with exposure, location, wind, sun, all of that is important. And what most importantly is what the client expectations are, what they want, whether we can achieve that or design something that is more appropriate that the client likes, I guess, if it's not going to work specifically how they envisioned it.
So how do you go about choosing the plants that you use? I've got some questions about native gardens and companion planting. How do you, when you have a project, sort of determine what plants would be appropriate for that particular project?
That's a really good question. And I'll give you an example of some large blocks of apartments. I guess I've done remedial works on green walls for native plants that were used on the building by, and this is why it's so important to use someone like us who is specialised in this, instead of contracting out to a cheaper, I guess, landscaper or somebody who hasn't taken into account important issues. With Stringer, putting the wrong variety on a green wall will grow out too far and then just kill everything else off underneath. And then when you prune that back, you've got nothing. So correct varieties of these types of plants that are suitable for the location and the purpose. So planter box design, rooftop design and green wall design, it's very important not just to specify the particular type of plant, but the exactly correct variety so that you're not getting too much growth that smothers other plants or backfires, I guess, on the client within 12 to 18 months. And then down the track, it's too late. And then it has to be removed and remedial works embarked upon.
So and looking at green roofs, is it possible to retrofit a green roof? And do you have any experience with doing this?
Yes, it is, but it all comes down to, at the end of the day, engineers. So if the engineer allows, they'll basically give us a set of guidelines that we can work with, and then we can work out what we can do for the client based on that site, because load bearing is super important, and then drainage, all those other issues. So if we can core drill drainage in, retrofit that into the building, so it's very doable, yeah. But it all comes down at the end of the day what the engineer says we can do.
This is a very pertinent question from Kylie. What are the biggest mistakes that building designers make when specifying green rules, or I'll extend that to roofs as well?
Drainage.
I would say drainage and irrigation.
Yeah.
If the irrigation isn't designed well, with the understanding of what it's going to go through every day, the pump system that's going to deliver that water every day to those plants that completely and utterly rely on it. For me, it's water. Yeah. Well, sure, I know it's definitely.
So they're looking at the services, that the water, the drainage, the electricity, those sorts of things that are required to maintain that green roof or wall.
I've got another very good example for you on one of the very same ones. Obviously cut some corners, but I'm doing a retrofit, also not so much a retrofit, remedial works on a building that has extensive planter boxes as well surrounding the building. Had insufficient waterproofing, bad planter box design, no access to drain, or no efficient and effective access to the drainage points. One, the planter boxes were full, and they are quite large planter boxes, and no water. So, and the building couldn't understand when I've written a remedial report on how to fix this, that they need water. Well, and you can't rely, especially in a commercial situation, on every individual apartment to water those.
No.
So they've had to now get a plumber to bring a water point to every single planter box on the building, which I will then start in the next few weeks on.
Hooking up to the rest of the planters individually.
Yeah.
Wow.
So clearly the issue of design at the beginning is really important.
Very.
Corey's been asking what services offerings do you provide? Do you only offer a full design and maintenance, or do you do separate consultations at different stages of the design? What sort of services do you provide, and how are they sort of broken down?
We consult, and we can do that at the design phase and all the way through. We design ourselves, but we can also have input into the design that you put forward. We install, we maintain, and we remediate.
Interesting. So interesting question. Is it at all possible to grow small trees horizontally from a wall for an intense 3D impact? It's an interesting question, and if anyone knows the work of Austrian artist and sometime architect Friedrich Hundertwasser, that was one of his favourite things, which was trying to grow trees out windows and interesting things like that.
I just think of
it's an interesting question.
So a fig will self-seed into a wall. You can see that all over the rocks in Sydney, for example. I'd try those. Try a Port Jackson fig.
And look at drainage.
Yeah, and good luck.
Trees aren't such a good idea in green walls, no. Well, especially in planter boxes. But
maybe they need to include that in their brief to you and see what you come up with.
Roots. Yeah, invasive roots. We'll bring it all undone.
A big issue for planter boxes.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, safety and design issues obviously need to be taken into account. What do we need to look at in terms of safety for green roofs, presumably access to the roof?
There need to be
other things.
So if you are working in an environment where you're working at heights, if you come within 2 meters of a building edge, you need to have an anchor. You need to have an anchor that someone can attach to so that they can't go anywhere near that or over that edge. So precast anchors or anchors need to be added to a rooftop without a doubt. Access is so important. So safe ladders for people to walk up and down. Remember that they're going to take green waste up and down from the rooftop. How are they going to do that? What are the stairs like? What are the lifts like? Is there a goods lift? Are you going to put people, no horticulturalist wants to move a full bin down 30 flights of stairs. So you have to think about those people and how they're going to work. But yeah, the safety stuff's really important, and access.
So one of the other comments is really about autonomous watering and water capture. So obviously the less physical maintenance needs to be done, the more that can be done automatically. I presume that's preferable for these types of systems.
Yep. absolutely. And right down to IoT technology we're working on at the moment as well. So everything, I mean, at the moment, Ali's got the ability to, I guess, monitor and turn things on and off from anywhere. So yeah, there's some fantastic technology out there.
It sounds like a great use of it in the future. That's fantastic. Look, thank you very much for speaking to us today about green walls and roofs and planter boxes. I'm sure everyone's going to be really enthused about including those in their projects. Just a little word of aside, I'll let you know that the green roof I put on my garage had a pair of plovers lay their eggs on there, which is a fantastic thing because, of course, plovers lay their eggs on the ground. So a green roof is a perfectly protected area for them to think that it's the ground.
Yeah.
So with that lovely story, look, I'll thank you very much for coming along today, and thank you very much also to Zara and to all our attendees. Members, we'll see you at the online meetings next month, but don't forget to keep your eyes open for all the other exciting events happening on the BDAA and the upcoming further seminars in relation to healthy buildings. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.